This is Dr. Von Hansen from Washburn University with some tips on how to prepare the snare excerpts for the 2021 KMEA auditions. Let's start with number 13. This is my favorite etude from the book because it goes so many places and allows us to really be musical on the snare drum. The introduction is very full and majestic, and the space between each of the fermati allow the player to be really expressive with the silence. One thing you want to make sure is you see that the fermata is over the top of the quarter note and not over the top of the roll. This means that the roll is in time, and then we put an articulation, and then we have the space, and you can choose what that space is, and you can be nice and free with your time and make a musical statement. We have to make sure on the third one that we do play that roll in time, and we have the decrescendo, crescendo all in time. So counting this is a really difficult thing at this tempo. So I'm going to give you some tips on how I do that. To make sure that I'm consistent in my rhythms on this first line, I do 30-second note based rolls, and I count this at twice the tempo. So I think of each eighth note as a quarter note and each 16th note as an eighth note. I'm going to count a couple of these bars and put the notation on the screen so I can show you what I mean about that. The first bar, I count like this. 1 and 2 and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. And then this third and fourth bar, we have this decrescendo, crescendo, and then a big gap that we have to put this 16th. So counting this way really helps me place all this. That goes like this. 1 and 2 and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 5 E and a 6 E and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. These are not forte piano rolls. They're fortissimo rolls that gradually come down to piano. So we want to make sure that we don't have just a big front and disappear right away. We want to keep some presence at the front and then come down. So what I do is I attack these rolls with my first two hands strong, and then I make sure that the dynamic comes down gradually. Let me show you what that looks like. The Allegro con brio section is pretty straightforward with a couple little traps. The first thing you want to make sure you pay attention to is the con brio part of this. It means to play with vigor or brilliance. So to me, that means that it's articulate and bright, but it's not heavy. So we don't want to overplay this section and get really thuddy with our drum. Lines 5 and 6 pose the most technical difficulty here because we need to make sure we play it as written. We don't put any accents on the drags, and we don't accent the start of each of these rolls. To maintain my dynamic consistency through here, I keep my right hand on the number and the and throughout the whole bar, and I fill in the e's and the uhs or the ornamentations of the drags with my left hand. So if I play just my right hand, you can hear what that sounds like. We'll talk about the forte piano in a second. But if I put in my left hand there, you can hear the ornamentation without me accenting the right hand, and those rolls are nice and smooth and even dynamically, and I don't have this front on them. So that sounds like this. Okay, so let's talk about that forte piano here. In order to do this, we do need to have a strong front that disappears quickly. So I'm going to use the drum head to my advantage. The center is stronger and more articulate, and the side at the front is a little softer, so often we play our soft stuff here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that very first note right in the center, and then I'm going to do the following note on the edge. If I was to do that really slow, it would look like this. And if I do that fast, you can hear it disappear real quick. So if we use that edge, we can get that real front disappear and come back really quickly back up to that fortissimo. The end of this section, we have this ritardando. It goes into a roll on the last 16th note over fermata, and that's kind of confusing to think about. And this is a place where you can be musical and make your decision. I like to think of this kind of like an engine that is revving down and slowing down. So I play that last note as just a long buzz on my left hand. So I have ba 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 ba. We want the waltz tempo to feel like a dance because a waltz is a dance. What we have going on in a waltz is the boom, chick, chick, boom, chick, chick, boom, chick, chick. And we establish this in these first 4 bars where the chick, chick part, I have to think about the boom part there. Boom, tick, tick, boom, tick, tick. And I'm trying to keep that going on throughout this whole section so I can have this, the feel of a dance. I'm actually imagining Victorian era people in big dresses and powdered wigs dancing around while I'm playing this section. And then I get a chance to make a melody on the snare drum on the 5th bar of this waltz tempo. So to make a melody, we have to think about phrasing. To me, this is a 8-bar phrase that is a question and answer. So it's a 4-bar question and then a 4-bar answer. To make this make sense to me, I actually sing pitches to myself as if I'm playing an instrument that has melodic pitches. So if I was to sing this, what's going on in my head, I think be-up, ba-be-up, bum 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 bum, ba-be-yum, ba-be-yum, bum 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 bum. So I can have some movement in there. And if I think that while I play snare drum, you can feel this melodic phrase rather than just feeling like we're a robot and playing this all equal. So see if you can hear that in my playing. The Largo y molto passante section here is my favorite because I have a pretty ridiculous picture going on in my head. Translated from Italian into English, this basically has a sense of being heavy or broad. So what I have in my head is the story, The Emperor's New Clothes. If you're unfamiliar with this, it's a story about an emperor who hires a weaver to make him the best clothes ever, and this weaver convinces him that he has made a thread that is invisible to everybody except only the smartest people. So the king pretends that he can see this invisible clothes, and he puts them on and he walks through the town imagining that he's the only one who can see it because he's so royal-blooded, and everybody is pretending that they can see it as well because they don't want to be stupid until a kid comes out and says, the emperor's wearing nothing. So to me, I have the sense of, I think he's a very rotund, well-fed king, and so he's walking through the town very full of himself, very sure, but the humor in that really gets me to laugh and not play harsh and heavy, so it's just this big, round, full sound, and I can be kind of satirical and funny. And so it makes this section sound really exciting, and I get a kind of laugh to myself while I'm playing. It's kind of fun to have fun playing music. In order to get this image across, I think of this section in 6/4 instead of 3/4, so the 8th notes I'm thinking as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To get the weight, I'm using a little bit more arm. I'm playing 32nd note bass rolls, so they're nice and full. This largo tempo is around 50, so it's pretty slow. So we need to have a nice full, quick roll. I want to have some body to my roll, so I use that 32nd note, and I'm really thinking of those, like big trumpets announcing the emperor as he's walking down the street. That's what's going on in my head as I play this. To show you how I count this in 6/4, I'm going to count a little bit out loud, and then I'll point out a couple little technical issues in the middle of this. To count this in 6/4, I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5E and a 6E and a 1, 3, 4, 5E and a 6E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5E and a 6E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 5E and a 6E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5E and a 6E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5E and a 6E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Moving on. So I'll talk about that roll in a second. So you can hear there's some phrasing in my voice. I'm always singing some sort of melody as I play. I don't just play rhythms. We need to phrase snare drum or else it's boring. It just sounds like we're playing one sound. But if we have dynamic phrasing, we can make music on the snare drum. So you can hear, once again, I made this a 4-bar phrase, that there's a point in the middle where we have a question answer. And at that point, there's a half note roll. So this is the 4th full bar on line 9. There's a half note roll followed by a quarter note roll. If you were just to interpret that as continuing your hands to move, it would just sound like one continuous roll. But the half note roll is the end of the phrase, and then the quarter note roll is the start of the next phrase. You can see we have a pickup on this line. Everything really starts with the 5E and a 6E and a 1. There's a lead in to the downbeat. So I'm going to re-articulate that quarter note roll. I'm going to play the half note, and I actually decrescendo just a tiny bit, and then I put some big emphasis and I crescendo into the next measure. So this is what re-articulating that roll sounds like in that fourth bar. So the last thing to consider here is the fermata is on the roll at the end of the line, so we need to make sure we hold that out and connect it to the allegro con brio. We don't want there to be a disconnection here. The roll continues and you start the allegro immediately without any sort of a breath mark. The allegro con brio and maestoso sections here are a callback to the start. In music terms, we call this a recapitulation. We want to make sure that they sound with the same articulation and intention as we had at the start, so we can feel that we're calling back that material. The very last thing is this vivo. So it should be played as fast as we can comfortably, not out of control. We want to make sure it's comfortable and with a lot of articulation so we can hear everyone. I slightly accent my left hand just to make sure that all of those E's and U's are super articulate and noticeable to the listener. There's several other things to think about on this etude and the other one past what I covered on this video. So if you have more questions or you want to reach out to have a lesson, please feel free to contact me. Right after this video, you'll see my credentials where you can email me and ask any questions you have, set up a virtual or in-person lesson. I'll be happy to work with anybody who reaches out to me. Thank you.